This land was made for you and me. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to New York Island.
All right, so
Here we go, William. Greetings.
greetings.
Happy hour. It's not a Friday night, but it's a Tuesday night. Good as a time as any for a happy hour.
Happy hour
discussion.
conversation.
Yes.
Here we are, folks. Welcome back to our conversations, happy hour conversations on politics and philosophy. My name's William John Cox. This is my long-term friend, Joann.
Hello.
She's an internationalist, worked in the former Soviet Union, and has a lot to say about international affairs and among everything else. And I'm a retired public interest lawyer who has little to say in these matters, but I'd love to hear Joann.
You have lots to say.
We've been at this.
A lot to say.
We've been at this a couple of months now, and last week's we had about 1,000 views, 500 the week before that, 500 the week before that. So we're doing pretty well in terms of getting people in. But listen, folks, if you've stayed with us this far, stick around. We're not traditionalists. We're independents. We're just here to talk about the things that may be of interest to all of us. And you may hear something different than what you may hear from other sources. So, Joann,
Yeah.
what do you want to talk about tonight?
Something different. Well, I mean, certainly this presidential race has thrown something different at us, I would say. But this is part of the reason why some of us there's things we love about politics and things we hate about politics. But one thing about politics is that sometimes it's not predictable. And I think that it's been really interesting to see how things play out. Even though we knew it was likely that Joe Biden, like the last time we talked, it was just seeming really inevitable that Joe Biden was going to have to step aside and
just how and when.
It's just how and when. And would he do it soon enough for the Democrats to be able to rally and actually be able to make a campaign out of things with only 100 days left in this election cycle? But, I have to say, it's been really interesting to see how the public responds. And that's something you can't always predict, And there's been a surge of energy on the Democratic side. You can't deny it. $200 million Kamala Harris has raised in the last
and white men for Kamala.
And white dudes for Kamala.
Yeah.
White dudes for Kamala.
Yeah,
and, so these are the things that make politics. I mean, sometimes people hate to talk about, but honestly, these are the things that sometimes make politics kind of fun to watch, these kind of unexpected turns of things. So, I mean, that's I think we're in a completely different dynamic now than we were just a couple of weeks ago in this race, a completely different dynamic, where the Trump campaign needs to pivot and resituate itself against an opponent that's really going to be able to actually make a case against them. And then you also have the dynamic of the first woman of color ever running for president. And that, while I think we all get tired of listening to the identity politics stuff, that can't be overstated in terms of how significant that is too, in this country. I mean, it is a significant thing. And so I actually think, I know we broke the sound barrier in some sense when Barack Obama became president, but a woman as well, I would like to say that there is a dynamic with women running for the highest office that is at play as well. And so it's going to be really interesting to see how all these things play out, especially as we get closer to election day and both campaigns get more fierce in their, campaigning. So for me, I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing that we've got some energy in the race now, and it's a good thing that we have somebody who can vocalize more effectively the case that against Donald Trump becoming president again. So, I mean, that's what I'm seeing. But I'm very interested in terms of to see how things play out on what I consider the latent misogyny that we have in the American public around women being in positions of power. That's my thought. So that's to kick it off there, William.
Well, I don't know. You might want to get a copy of the Hillbilly Elegy and read about it and see what, are you a cat woman? You know, this it's a there's it's an interesting thing that happened. Okay, keep in mind that the bar on vice presidential picks isn't really high ever since Sarah
Oh
Palin.
boy.
Ever
No,
since Sarah
no.
Palin. I mean, that was it. That
Even Dan Quayle before that.
okay,
I
even
mean, let's be honest.
but in any case, but here you have it, and instantly, there's all kinds of remorse in terms of some of the MAGA, the real hardcore MAGA group about him, and a lot of the things he said about Trump. On one hand, what his wife has said about Trump, and what his feelings are. He's an intellectual. He considers himself to be a social conservative, and that he's thinking about things, and he does have thoughts about things, and he might
Mhm.
be the kind of guy you could sit down and deal with. I don't know, but whether but whether you're going to get the truth or not out of anyone at all in politics, given the way it's being conducted today, that's a real toss up.
I
You
mean,
know,
how do you know what he really believes when he was so vociferous against Trump and now he's, his big cheerleader? I mean, how do you trust anything he says?
well, I don't know. I mean, if when I get into that really brainstem conspiracy theory, please back in here, I can real quickly see, the real powers that be. And keeping in mind that from what I've seen, I haven't really gotten a book depth read
Mhm.
on J.D. Vance yet, but he's a real created person. He's been created in Silicon Valley. Peter Thiel, I don't know his background, but he's a big billionaire money person in Silicon Valley. He took him under his wing out of Yale. They all came out of Yale together. They
Okay.
and he got a job out here in Silicon Valley. He was sort of quasi-liberal, a libertarian in his views, and so that's where a lot of the money and posturing and tailoring of him took place, I think. With that,
So he's a created,
yes,
he's a
that's where the money, that's where
manufactured.
the big money came from for him to run for Senate and for him to be positioned in the way that he was. And so when you look at it like at it from that reason, that's also why the billionaires are lining up to back Trump. Why? I mean, okay, again,
Money.
no,
It's about their money. It's it's
okay,
it's not about, I mean,
but
these
what I'm
tech
trying to say is,
billionaires are not liberals. I mean, sorry.
okay, we're back down in my brainstem again, and that is that they're sitting there saying, okay, we've got to get we have to use Biden. I mean, we have to get Trump in order to get JD in, and then we suddenly Trump becomes a martyr, and we start raising money to carve his face on Mount Rushmore, and wave the bloody flag for decades while they just run the government. They just run rampant over the government with a fully empowered unitarian government with full control over Congress because of the control of the corporations, control both of them. And they not only control the Congress, both houses of the Congress, they control all the state houses. And they control all the elected legislature. I mean, all the judicials, offices
Do
throughout
judicial appointments and
all
everything, and it's supposed
throughout
to
the country
become.
because they're elected throughout, all your state Supreme Courts and all of these are all elected. So when those all become fully controlled, as they almost are today, uh, then there's just no turning back. I don't see how we could survive,
Yeah,
this
no.
another presidency. I don't see how under any imaginable scenario, and I was just making up stuff, of course, that we could really survive another Trump presidency. I mean,
Well, because the thing is, I mean, he's not interested in policy. He just hands policy over to the Heritage Foundation and all these other sort of like conservative think tank people, and they're the ones that are going to implement that
right, and judicial
agenda.
appointments to the you know, to that group there that controls
Right.
that the Federalists basically
The Federalist Society and all those ones,
um,
yeah.
and just turns that over and just starts thinking about making money.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I think there's been a misconception about Silicon Valley. I mean, in the sense of where they're at on the political spectrum. I mean, they're really actually at the end of the day, and we've seen this over and over the last decade at least, with the way that they've behaved in terms of how they operate their platforms and everything else. There's not, they come from a sort of background of, the liberal Bay Area, but that's not where their politics is at this point for sure. They've birthed somebody like JD Vance to further an agenda where they will be less regulated and they will make more money. And that's the bottom line for that. So, I mean, essentially, I think in some ways, what I think is that this election is very much going to be about women and women voting, because it's going to be about this backlash against the whole abortion sort of, clampdown that's going on. And then on top of it, I think on some level, in women's understanding of things and how we look at things, we're just seeing that there's so many sort of like double standards. And we actually see that out of most groups that are going to lose out under the 2025 agenda, women are a big group that's going to lose out on the 2025 agenda. I mean, in terms of the way that things are going to be dialed back. And the way that you can tell with some of the things that JD Vance has said, if it really is like, according to your lower brainstem, about positioning him to actually be in power for an extended period. Because I agree. I mean, he's much scarier than Trump to me. I mean, I find him scarier than Trump because he's smart and because he's well-spoken and because he has skill sets that Trump doesn't have. I really think that there is kind of a masterful agenda afoot, and it's really at the end of the day going to be up to women as to whether they actually succeed or not, because you have to have suburban women in these swing states.
Well, I agree entirely,
for them to win.
But of course, I always balance that equation with young people.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what we need is this. We need this core of women, and I mean that CORPS. This core of women, who are in high positions in this country today, because of the advances they've made in the last 50 years in government, and in academia, and in business and corporations. So we have thousands of really well qualified women out there in this country who are well capable of stepping in and helping form a government that benefits women, that actually is truly representative of women and their needs and the greater needs of our society. I think that's all true. And I think that the movement needs the organizational skills of these women to make it to organize it so that it runs right, so that it has organization. I don't want to say the same over again, just that it is organized. But what you need is the power of that young people, the drive, the drama of them, their need to be a part of this, because they must be a part of this, because this is their future that's involved here, and I think that they because from what I understand, the young people today are not necessarily that political. I mean, they're certainly not religious. I mean, they're certainly losing religion. along the way. But I do think that even though you have conservative young people and liberal young people, I think by and large, most young people are sort of apolitical.
Well,
They're interested in it, but they're not out in the traditional, involved at parties, addressing envelopes, answering the phones, canvassing, doing all of that political
I
stuff.
think that they feel like they need to do something outside the system, and that's where I get that really is hard for me, because I see that. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's a perspective of youth, I guess, but I don't really see that is going to change things the way we need it changed, and save us from the agenda
Not
on the
not
hard part.
alone. Oh no, not alone at all. But I'm saying that women alone can't do it either. It
No, I get
requires
it.
both.
I'm concerned about the youth though as well, because I don't know that there's this tradition of political activism. Like in the 60s and 70s, in the 60s, people really were like trying to do things within the system. Still, I mean, there certainly were marginal groups that were like, not wanting to do things in the system, but a lot of people were working within the system. They were protesting. They were working, they believed in working within the system to change it. I don't know that that's the case at this point. I just feels like very like there's a really like a marginal push with young people. Like they kind of like they've rejected the entire system. Like they've rejected the idea that participating in the system, like through a political party, through working on a campaign, through knocking on doors, through all this stuff, it feels like they've rejected the idea that that's really going to bring about the change that they need. And I'm afraid that that's fearful to me, because I know that it's the only thing that's going to, like, going out to live on a commune in the middle of Guerneville and, I don't know, do what, grow pot or whatever they're doing. I mean, that's not gonna answer China. That's not gonna deal with climate change. It's just not.
Well,
So
no, it's not. But as you probably observed more closely than I did, the or the color revolutions around the world that occurred also, and that's young people who are just organizing this, right here. This kind of communication that they have today is a way that
it was new
surpasses,
then.
huh?
It was new then. The color revolutions in 2003, 2004, 2005. The whole thing was new then, in terms of social media, in terms of citizen journalism, in terms of using the phone to capture things and hold the government to account, mostly authoritarian governments. That was 15 years ago. I feel like now it's like that initial sort of hopefulness we had about what internet would mean in terms of in terms of citizen journalism, in terms of increased transparency, in terms of way of holding authorities accountable. I mean, it doesn't feel like it has that at this point. Now it feels like it's a platform for generating more propaganda. Like it feels like it had that initial sort of like potential, and then it became like a propaganda platform.
I see your point.
I don't mean, I mean,
No,
it's both.
I see your point. I see your point in terms of actually circulating information, in terms of using these phone, I'm not saying that there's a high content quality of this communication.
Yeah.
In other words, these aren't 1,000-word essays
Right.
that carry content. This is I actually it is maybe it's the revenge on Trump, in terms of tweeting, is that what takes him down is not tweeting, because tweeting has become passe as soon as he basically did what he did with it, and Musk took it over. But in terms of using social media today, I think that the young people could take him down. I think that they could use the social media, the full impact of it all that we can only imagine.
Right.
I mean, I, I don't even begin to try to understand a lot of it. As
Well,
to how
do you think that, okay, so I feel like we've moved warp speed. I feel like our society, and this is one thing that I also feel like, and you know, we talk about politics and philosophy. So the philosophical side for me is that I feel like our society has moved at warp speed in the course of just my lifetime, your lifetime. If you look at the pace at which change is happening, you know, change used to happen at a slower pace, and now the pace of change has just sped up. And with that in mind, it almost feels like things that were new and had all these potential, like then all of a sudden they become passe, and then it's another thing, and then it's another thing. And that cycle is happening faster and faster and faster and faster. Like to me in 2016, you know, you could sway an election on social media. You did it. In fact, it happened with the Russians and everything. I mean, partially that's part of what happened, right? But I don't know that that's even true now. I mean, like it's 8 years later. I don't know. Is it really social media that's gonna change people's opinions? Like, I don't, it feels like it's like we did that, we digested it, we moved on. I'm not sure what's
so
gonna
what
change
is
people's
it then?
opinions. I
What
know.
is it?
What is it? What is it? What is it that's gonna change people's opinions, like where they're at right now?
What is the
Um,
best way to communicate to to people, and not just the American people, but people all over the world?
well, there's the ways to communicate, and then there's what we're communicating. You know, I mean, what is it we're going to communicate that's going to change people's minds? If like they don't see the same, they don't have the same concern about the future with this agenda being implemented that we do. Why is that? I mean, why is that? That's a big question for me. And I really feel like it's a lot about grievance politics. It's about people feeling like they have been left out and left behind, and they're mad about it. And they're looking for somebody to, I mean, that's how I see. I don't know what else, but I don't know how you get people out of that rut. But I'm just, you know, to me, I feel like it's something to change that into hope and seeing a possibility in things.
Well, yeah, or how to have your grievance heard. I mean, that's why it's in the
Thank you.
First Amendment. That's why it's in the First Amendment. You know, the right to petition for redress of grievance is our constitutional right, and our ability to do that and to have our grievance heard and addressed is the essence of our consent to be governed.
I love that.
I mean, that's
So
the very first amendment to the Constitution. That, in its essence, is what it's all about.
I love that. And so what would it be to hear their grievance?
Well, then I don't know. A way is to have ways for them to grieve and to, yeah, and to be heard and for action to be taken on it. You know,
So
that's
that's the thing. I think this is the appeal of Trump, is that he voices their grievances.
right.
He does.
And he makes promises.
And he makes promises he's never going to keep them, but they don't even seem to care.
No, because
Want it voiced.
it's like winning the lottery. You know you're not going to win the lottery. You know it in your heart, in your soul, as you walk in there with your hard-earned paycheck and you cash your paycheck and you buy those damn lottery tickets week after
You
week
want to
after
believe.
week. And you see it on television, the lotto, the big winners, you know, yeah, but you know you're not going to win. I mean, in your soul, you know you're not going to win, but you just keep going for it. And I think that there's something about a con man that is hard to give up on, you know. I mean, honestly, you know, as a cop, you know, I dealt, and as a DA, I dealt with people that got conned, you know,
No.
not infrequently. And most of the time, it was like they didn't call the police. Other people called the police that they had been conned because they were too ashamed to admit it, or they didn't want to admit it, even when it was clear that they had been. I think that's, that's just a part of us. That it's hard for us to admit that we've been cheated or tricked or taken advantage of, because it makes us feel less about ourselves. It's impossible to come out of that and feel better about ourselves.
For sure. But what is it about what he says that makes people willing to con themselves just to be involved, just to hear it voiced? I mean, like, I think the reality is, I mean, I see him very much as the grievance of white men. I mean, essentially, I mean, that's a lot of it.
Certainly
Primarily, not everybody, but I get it. It's like, but there's like this kind of belief in the kind of American life that you're supposed to get. You know, if you do a few things, you're supposed to get, if you, go to school, if you work hard, if you go to a job, there's this version of American life that you're supposed to be able to have. It's almost like your birthright. And if you don't get it, then that's because somebody took it from you.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
And like, he gives voice to that with the whole immigrant bashing stuff and the latent sexism stuff and the whatever stuff. I mean, like, it gives you somebody to blame for not having it. He doesn't actually really suggest anything to help you get it back.
No, he has no policies, no program.
He says the
no
tariffs,
nothing.
but the
Just
tariffs
I will take care of it. I will take care of it. Just trust me, I'll take care of it.
But it's incredible, like, how much people just want to hear their grievance heard. And they also feel like in this day and age, they're not allowed to say certain things because then they'll be accused of being a racist, a sexist, a whoever. So they don't get to hear have their grievance heard, or they don't feel like they know how to say it the right way for people to hear it. And then he does. And it's massively psychological, what's going on. Because looking at it objectively, this guy isn't really giving these people anything. He's not giving them anything. He's giving the Silicon billionaires a ton, but he's not giving them shit. Excuse me. I shouldn't have said that. But anyway, I'm just saying, like, I think that that's the dynamic at play. And can the Democrats convince them that they're going to be able to give them anything more?
Well, I don't know. He certainly lends himself to parody. I mean, it seems like, I spend, the way my mind works, I spend time doing a lot of strange things during the day. But one of them is making up.
It's being retired, William.
Making up political ads. What would you show on television as an ad to get people to vote one way or another or whatever?
Oh, yeah.
But certainly, this is one of the most exciting, interesting times politically that I've lived through. Back in 1973, as a young, newly minted lawyer, I was in Washington, D.C., working for the Nixon administration as he was frantically clawing, hanging on to office through the very last days. And that was exciting times. That was exciting political times. I mean, the news was electric, even every evening as to what was happening. What was the latest thing the Washington Post had broken on the story? It was an interesting, exciting time. And in a way, I mean, think about it. My God, I mean, someone just almost assassinated. I mean, shot in front of us. I mean, I watched the video just before I was waiting to see you. The actual film, like that last they showed almost like 5 minutes of film, before the shooting, the shooting and after the shooting, and what was powerful about it was just how fast it happened. It was just that fast. It was just like within a couple of seconds. It was just boom, boom, boom. It was all over. Someone was dead. Other people were wounded. It appeared, from the video that, clearly that first bullet, because he had turned his head to the right. He was looking up at a screen. And when he turned his head to the right, it was just enough for that bullet to pass past his head and to clip his ear. I mean, it was almost like someone moving the satchel with the explosives around the other side of the oak table and the bunker blew up, and Hitler walked out, just saying he'd lost a little hearing in one ear. It's like these are miracle things, but
yeah, Yeah.
It's an interesting time.
Well, you know, that's the old Chinese curse though, right?
Of course, may you
May
live
you
in
live in
interesting times.
interesting times.
Yes. Well, we do that, Joanne. And here we are again. It's time to probably start wrapping this up. I see.
Yeah, yeah. But we've been doing this for a couple months. So what are your,
Oh,
I
that's
mean,
right.
what are your thoughts at this point? I mean, you know, we have a couple months, we have 2 or 3 months to go. What are your, and we're, you know, I'm gonna go and take my summer break here. But I mean, tell me, like, where are you feeling like, tell me one thing that this is our conversations have brought up for you that you didn't expect, or something that you didn't expect out of this that's happening for you.
Hmm. Boy, that's a good question. I wish you'd let me know he was coming.
Ah! Not
Well,
everything it has to get prepared there.
I'm a lawyer. I like to be prepared. Uh, well, I think, well, I I think in being prepared
Hmm.
that we go back years. I remember driving uh, and driving for an hour and a half to 2 hours in Los Angeles traffic to come and bring you quiche while you were remodeling a house in order to talk to you about politics and things just like this. In a way,
That's right.
you know,
We've always enjoyed
and
it.
that was years ago, and we stay in touch, and I think that certainly my expectation of this was that I would not be alone
Hmm.
in doing this. I couldn't do this
Right.
alone. I could not
Yeah.
sit here like this week after week and talk about some political discussion. I'm far too shy to do this.
Mhm.
It's hard for me in my 80s now, almost mid 80s now, to handle words. It's getting harder and harder to converse. But all in all, I think the thing that that I've gotten out of this in working with you has been a, well, first, it's been a fulfillment of my expectations
Oh, good.
above and beyond anything that I expected when we started. And in fact, if you look at the history of this, if you go on YouTube, you'll see the first string of the first 4 or 5 videos looked one way, and then they became the Joann videos. And
Okay.
and that is because you're such a natural at this, and I was able to let you handle the flow of it all. So I think that's what I personally what I've gotten out of it is a sense of fulfillment that we've actually we're doing something that this is what we can do.
Yeah, and I
What
think
can we
that's
do?
really
You can send money to candidates. That's just
smart.
another drop in the bucket for them. I mean, you can try to do things, and but for you and me, this is what we can do. Is that we can make these videos and keep finding the time to do it, and it's a real pleasure. I mean, I really enjoy our conversations. Uh,
Yeah, me too. Me too.
so
And you
it's,
know something, I think that also what you said there is about people feeling less alone because, you know, we're not talking heads on the news with, you know, all this like, oh, we work for this campaign or we did this or that or whatever. We're in some ways we're normal people. We've had interesting lives. Like a lot of people who are watching this have had interesting lives and have gathered perspective from a lot of different interesting places. But I think that it's nice to just feel less alone inside of this environment right now because we're in such a consequential, you said it's such an interesting time. It's also an incredibly consequential time. And sometimes it's just the weight of that. I mean, what I'll say that is a lot to bear by yourself. What I'll just say for me, I mean, I've really enjoyed our conversations. And I think for me as well, what it's been for me is, you know, I was getting ready to just kind of put my head in the sand for the few months to the election. Like I just, because of the consequential nature of it, because of just, I can't listen to certain things without getting upset, all that stuff. I was like, I'm just gonna, you know, maybe shut myself out here. But what's been really nice for me is these conversations have been a relief for me, actually. You know, like it's been a nice way to kind of not, it's been to look it all in the eye with a trusted friend and kind of like hold it in a different space than just trying to ignore it, you know? So that's been really lovely. And I hope people who are staying with us and have watched this, I hope it has done something like that for them too, you know? Yeah.
Well, I do too. That's well, it's good to see what, you know, about when you look at all the stats, when you look at, let's say that there's 1,000 people who viewed our conversation last week, or
Right.
a little over a week ago. And of that 1,000 people, maybe 250 of them stayed with us to the end. I mean, a quarter of, which would be a good, I mean, that would be a good statistic, which is,
Yeah.
that's
But these are
that's a
not
good,
quick conversations, or at least
no,
a half hour,
that's a
40
goodly
minutes.
number of people to stick
Yeah.
with us, and we do appreciate it. And as we wrap this up each time, we always pull out the book.
Pull out the
The
book,
book voters,
Transforming America.
Transforming America. The book is available along with all of my books at williamjohncox.com. And if you want information about the Voters' Bill of Rights, then go to the voter.io. And there you can get information about Voters' Bill of Rights and actually cast a ballot, whether you like it or not. And if you are at all interested in the philosophical aspects of what we talk about, there's the Book of Mindkind series of books. And I'm pleased to announce, as of today, I did publish the last of the little series of books of the Book of Mindkind.
Awesome.
I did finally
Look at that.
publish today. It's only about 40 pages, but
A slim volume.
it's it does talk about universal mathematics as the language of artificial intelligence and the structure of the cosmic nothing.
What an amazing subhead
Well,
for a book.
yeah, well, it does that. So anyway, that's where we are, folks. And as always, here's cheers to the people, and
may their consent to be governed never been taken for granted. Never be taken
for granted, because it is
I'll get the right
conditional.
tense.
It's conditional on good government. Just like that fly that's been nagging.
Oh my God, I can't wait to go find the floss water. Or just,
Okay.
I'm trying to be a Buddhist. I don't want to kill it. I just want it to go outside.
Okay, folks. See y'all next week. Take care.
care.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye-bye.